ST3 is a man, an enigma, also a creation, also an idea. So when it comes to hardops, in edit mode, there is a panel dedicated to the ST3 mesh tools, which is kind of some experiments that we've taken towards creating some different tools that can be used in hardops. So to just go through all of these in a row, you might notice that under mesh tools, curve extrude is darkened out. And in order for this to work, we need a curve. So I'm going to select this face and snap a cursor here. And then I'm going to shift A, add a path. And with a path, we can press G, X, and move this over and use snapping by holding Control. And I'm going to press R, Z, and just rotate this around. So we have something like this happening where it basically looks like we have a curve extending from the face. There's actually a secondary tool that was supposed to be connected to this that hasn't yet been completed nor started. And it's still in the planning stages, but we'll be hopefully making this workflow more complete in the future. But just to show this concept in action, we're just setting up our path. And so what I'm going to do is select the curve, select the mesh, tap into edit mode and press Q, and under ST3 mesh tools we're going to choose curve extrude, and you'll now notice that we've extruded it along this curve. And so basically what we can do at this point is adjust the smooth factor, which is one of my favorite ways to getting to adjust this. However, we will need to turn up a repeat and then get in here and actually adjust the factor where we can adjust that. We can also adjust the segments in case we're going for a particular type of look and we don't want as many rounds, making it difficult for us to get this around the curve. The other thing is that we can also do transform to the curve itself and have that propagate to the extrusion operation. So let's say that we grab these two parts and we press Ctrl T in order to twist. Well, now if we select the curve in this and we perform a curve extrude, it should actually twist, and it more than likely is because I'm using a path and not a Bezier. So let's delete this curve and Shift A, add a Bezier curve. And Bezier also needs to be moved over, so I just move it and hold Control to snap it incrementally, and then press RZ. But first we'll need to press period to change our pivot point to 3D cursor. And then I can press RZ to rotate it around. Maybe get it just right. And then maybe RX to just get the handle just right. And from here we can just extrude this handle and start making the form that we intend to extrude. So I'm going to press period, change things back to medium point, and we can just start moving this point around. So with this we can now press Ctrl T and put a little tilt into it, and then shift select the main one, choose curve extrude. And it looks like for some reason there isn't the tilt being taken into account, but that really isn't the biggest thing to show with this. The main thing is that you're able to take a curve and place it next to a face and extrude it out and adjust those segments, and then get in here and play with the smooth factor to choose how smoothly it actually integrates with the surface that you bring it out of. We can see that by lowering the smooth it can get a little bit unwieldy, probably resulting in a little bit of post-operation cleanup, while adjusting it to be a little bit higher gets it to be something that's a little bit more congruent that we can continue working with. So I'll press Control N and we'll make a new file, and the next tool that we want to talk about is Flatten to Face. Flatten to Face is something that probably deserves its own video. However, the easiest way to describe it is that if you were dealing with multitudes of different types of geometry and you were trying to get things aligned just right, for example, we will just stretch this out just slightly after putting a subdivision in it. If we select all of these, with our last selection being this, and we go and flatten it to face, we've now begun flattening it to this particular selection. If we press F9, we can actually choose if we want it to flatten to this individual face or to the active face. And this is something that we still consider to be a work in progress, but it is something that someday will be a little bit more interactive, I'm thinking. So here's another chance of us using it, and it seems to attempted to have flattened it to the face, but it is something that can still give rather unpredictable results. When it comes to explaining how these tools came to be, it's pretty much based off of some BMesh studies with seeing what was possible with us messing with edit mode. So all of these tools serve as experiments for potential ideas that we may be expanding on in the future. So integrating them into your workflow completely is still something that is a little experimental. The next one I want to talk about is align to face. So let's say that we had this face that was here, but we also had a cube, and we had this cube up in space. And we wanted to take this and actually align it to this. So notice that I selected first these 3 points and then selected these 3 points, and then I can press Q and we can actually choose align to face. However, it's not allowing it to work. And more than likely that's because this isn't a separate mesh. So I'm going to press L and select this whole mesh, and we'll press P and separate it. So now by going in edit mode with both of them, I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we press Q and choose align to face, and we notice that it's backwards, and it's backwards because of the selection order being incorrect. So let's try that again, but this time we reverse it. So 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, and then we go under mesh tools and choose align to face, and now we see that this shape has been aligned to this particular face that we had selected. And this is still something that we still are in the process of working on as far as integrating into the workflow and making it more interactive, but it is something that I do have a little bit of enjoyment playing with and find it showing promise because it offers so much interesting possibilities for what could be if we were able to get things to absolutely align to other things, even with their transformations being destroyed, and not using the built-in transformation snapping system. So now we actually have this snap to this. If we were dealing with the new Boolean branch, we could just perfectly join this, giving it a perfect solve because it's oriented perfectly. But let's just remove this and continue on. So the next thing I want to talk about is the align vertices tool. For this one, we'll delete this cube and we will just add a cube and just roll in some edge loops using Shift R and then roll in the mouse wheel. And so a situation may arise whenever you're modeling that you want to convert a selection of vertices into an arc. So while we're looking at this from the top, I'm just going to jump into the align vertices tool. And if you look at the help, you'll notice that shift clicking, dragging the middle green point will actually allow you to curve. So we'll shift click drag this and notice that now this is an arc. And so we'll press spacebar to apply, and if we look at our result, this is basically what we have received. The next one I want to show is that if we go into this and we use the align vertices tool and we hold control, we can actually turn this into a sharp V formation. There's still a lot that I have on the wish list when it comes to this tool, but we still consider it a prototype, but it is something that's available for users to experiment with at this time. The last aspect of the align vertices tool that I want to talk about is the actual align vertices portion, which we neglected to go over. So I added some loop cuts with Control R and then rolled the wheel in order to add additional spans, and then click to apply and then right click to leave them in the center. And we will just grab some of these points and just move them out. And let's say that we were wanting to actually align this area because this is basically an unruly area, right? So we select the first point and we select the last point, and if we go in here and choose the align vertices tool, we can see that we lost our selection. So we will select our first point and select our second point, and now we are ready to begin snapping. So if we press S, we can now begin actually painting our selection to begin snapping to this line, which will help us actually get the desired result. And we can do a lot of things in this mode, like shift scrolling to scale it and transform it. We could press G in order to move it, and at this point this is where you can control scroll in order to move it back and forth. You could also shift scroll it in order to scale it, and then of course we can do the old classic shift dragging in order to turn this into an arc, and then spacebar to apply. However, something happened with the shading here that definitely looks a little odd, so I'm going to press Shift N in order to ensure that my normals are looking correct. So that may be something we may be checking into after the video, more than likely being addressed in an upcoming update. And we'll go into align vertices again, and we'll just turn this into something a little more of a V. So we'll hold Shift, or actually Control, in order to turn this into a V, which is one of my favorite shapes to create with this thing. But I also love being able to grab the handle and move things around. Things got a little bit out of control right there, so we'll go back into it again And notice that I'm still able to press Alt-Z. I'm a big stickler for those hotkeys still being available inside of modals where it's available. So we could press spacebar and apply this. And let's say that we want to actually realign this to the specific vertices that would help get this edge exactly where we want. So we can press Q, go under ST3 Mesh Tools, choose Align Vertices, and we'll just grab the first point, grab the second point, press S to jump over to snap, and we will just paint our selection to get exactly what we want, and then spacebar to apply. And so up here, where it may be slightly harder and a little bit more confusing, let's try the same thing. We'll press Q, and we'll go under the Align Vertices tool, and we'll choose the first point, choose the second point of about where we want it, and then press S to snap it basically to this line. So things aren't snapping completely evenly, but this is where we can press E and it will actually equalize the vertice distance. But because we painted something on the inside, things are going to get a little bit more tricky. So this is where we can actually press spacebar to apply, select this whole area that just completely got out of control, and do something like press right click and go under loop tools and just choose space, where now these things are being adequately spaced as they're supposed to be, but there's still some areas being missing here. So let's select these, right click, and actually choose space again, and things almost look correct, except we want to maybe scroll through the F9 settings to make sure that they're correct. And let's actually take a look at the back here and think about doing the same thing. We'll space these out and just take a look at what our options are for what we're looking at here. And I'm just trying to find out where exactly our geometry went wrong here as far as keeping its order. More than likely it was the selection order. So let's actually undo this several times and go back to where we started. So we will edit, redo, because we still want to keep this, but this is the area that we want to fix. So one of the tips that this tool tells you all the time is selection order matters. So we want to select this one and select not that one. Let's try that again. S. Let's actually exit the tool, go back into it one more time. We'll choose the first point, choose this very last point. I don't know why it's having issues selecting this final point. And we select that one, switch to snap. And now we are actually able to snap it to a line because we have the right selection order. If we press G, we can switch to grab. If we hold control and we roll the wheel, we can actually position it where we need to. But if we shift scroll, we can actually scale this back to where we had it. So that is basically us getting this to snap exactly back where we needed to without having a whole lot of issues. So keep in mind that you can't select 2 points in the middle and then snap things after those outside of your selection order to snap inside of a selection order and expect them to be equalized. So that's one of the important things to keep in mind when using the Align Vertices tool. The next tool I want to talk about as far as these experimental tools is selection of Boolean. Selection of Boolean started off relatively simple, however it has gotten pretty nice now. So if we jump into it, we see that the first click will allow us to extrude, the second click will allow us to extrude inside, or actually the first click is inset, then the second one is extrude, and then the last click is finish. And this is basically the most organic method we've come up with for converting a mesh selection into a Boolean. So to show that again with a different area, we'll select these two faces and we'll just convert the selection to Boolean. So now we're adjusting the inset. We will click to go into the extrude, and then we click to complete the operation. So this is one of my favorite tools to use, and I'm proud of the journey that this tool has gone through. So to show it in one more way, we can actually go in here and actually use selection of Boolean. But instead of actually clicking to extrude, we also have the option to basically press shift and space bar to basically bring up a sort of mini menu of sorts to allow you to change the operation. So right now we're dealing with inset, but what if we wanted to offset it more and choose how far we wanted to offset? We could press shift space bar again, go in and adjust the inset, and then shift space bar and go in and adjust the extrude. So it's a slightly different flow method to working your way through the tool, but it is an additional option that we offer when it comes to dealing with selection of Boolean. Let's see, so we're in face mode, and the last tool that we want to talk about is Edit Multi-Tool. Edit Multi-Tool is a massive tool that's capable of doing much, but in short, it's basically capable of everything that you see in this panel, and X will allow you to switch through them. So right now, You see me basically jumping through it. I'm on select, which basically you could select something, and by control scrolling you can grow your selection, which can be useful for selection. If we press X, we switch over to spin, where any edge that's highlighted once clicked will be spun. We'll spin it again, and we'll spin it again until it's back where we need it. We'll press X again to switch this over to merge. Merge will allow you to click one point and merge it with another, which can be useful for simplifying geometry. Pressing X again will switch us over to dissolve, where you can just dissolve a selection, taking it down to its simplest form. Pressing X again will switch us over to join, where you can basically select one point and then click on another point to create a dialogue between them, similar to using J in edit mode. Even though this mesh is fairly destroyed, we're still just working our way through it. Pressing X again, we can switch over to knife, where you can cut using our knife system that we've been working with. We want to create a knife that's more useful for hard surface modeling. However, this one is still a work in progress and also has its own type of hotkeys. So I do endeavor to bring it back to something more akin to vanilla, but right now it's just a random attempt at attempting to make a knife active tool that's a little bit more multi-purpose than just a singular purpose knife tool. So if we press X again, we're back to the select tool, where we can select something, roll the wheel to grow our selection. And the interesting thing about this tool is that you can actually undo when you're in it. So I actually undid maximizing my selection and take it back to its most minimal selection. And we can just roll the wheel, get this where we want, and just do all sorts of things while we're in this tool. In fact, to talk about some other things you can do with this tool that's strange is we go into Edit Multi-Tool, and if we press B, we're able to set up a boundary loop bevel. And this is something that I actually do all the time whenever I'm modeling. So we can select these areas here. I'm just holding Shift to select multiple. And if we press B, we've actually added a boundary bevel to basically protect this parameter. And this is something that I've been working on integrating into my workflow personally ever since its inception, to further refine its intended behavior. But it is one of those things that I recommend people give a shot to. Another thing that's also quite handy with this Edit Multi-Tool that I'll be using quite often is the ability to select something and press C to clean it. This is quite nice. At first was something I found to be a little abrupt, but being able to select something and press C in order to clean it up is something that I found to be also quite essential and quite nice once you actually get used to what you're doing with it. So we can press spacebar and apply this, and that is the ST3 Edit Multi-Tool in a nutshell. So that leaves us with a line view. A line view in edit mode is probably in its best state here, and there's multiple ways you can access it. So you're looking at a line view here, but you're also able to use a line view as part of Flatten Align Select by basically control clicking this option. So if you want to use it as a standalone, you can do that here, and you can even right click and map this to a shortcut, because I took care to make sure that if users are falling in love with this, they're able to map it as a shortcut. So if we jump into this, if we jump into this, basically it will align you to a face. So let's put that to a test. We set up a bevel, and we are going to, what is going on this mesh? So we select everything, and we will just merge by distance, basically cleaning this area up. And so we'll bevel this face. And let's say we want to align our view here. We just click on Align View. We are aligned. And best of all, we can hold Control and roll the wheel. We can hold Shift to roll the wheel to get it to align a little bit differently. But depending on how you're trying to get this thing oriented, you can get it just perfect. And best of all, if you are content with the position that you're in, you can press E, and that'll set an empty there so that the next time that you want to return to this position, you can. And what I mean by that is, right now we're in object mode. Let's say I want to return to this. Well, like I said, basically reset axis is an embassy for helping you get to alignment. So we can just control click this, and right now we're just aligning to the basic shape itself. But if we hold Control and Shift and we scroll, we're basically realigned back to the target empty. And when we roll the wheel, we're actually realigning ourselves to the empty that we've set up in space as our alignment point here. So hopefully that has helped users understand, basically our purposes with view alignment and how they could possibly help it work for their needs. So continuing on, the last thing that's listed here is nothing, which means that we basically covered all of the ST3 mesh tools. There are dedicated videos on this topic as well, so if you're interested in more information on them, I definitely recommend checking into some of them. But for the most part, They are here as an experiment of some prototype ideas that we're working with to hopefully give users some insight to additional workflows that we feel we could be working towards improving.